Hello, welcome. So nice of you to be here. I know at this point, some of you are thinking, am I in the right place? Where's the guy with the robes and the cool Asian clothes? Yeah, or did I dial into the wrong meeting? Nope, this is the right place. I am Sambara, Buddhist monk, the abbot of the Bodhi Woods Forest Hermitage, and the director of Vajrananda Acharya. Yeah. And I welcome you here today, my students in San Francisco, my students in Paris, France, Munich, Germany, Vienna, Austria, Reykjavik, Iceland, Bangalore, India, and of course, Budapest, Hungary. I welcome you to Satsang and the beginning of the 2019 teachings on work as spiritual practice. So, just as you can wear, the spiritual clothes and have a spiritual expression, you can also wear a business suit and have a very powerful business spiritual expression through business, through work. So we're going to be learning the Vajrayana Buddhist teachings on the spirituality of work. And this isn't something like, how you say a mantra that codes for you. This isn't something where you learn how to do meditative exercises in sales meetings. You go into a sales meeting, you're like, okay, just a moment. But these are very ancient and powerful teachings and spiritual observations for work. And it creates success and spiritual enlightenment. So we will be learning many, many, many different teachings, observations, and practices over the next 12 months. But to begin today, we'll start with meditation. We will meditate for 3 songs. The first song on the navel chakra, second song on the heart, third song on the third eye. Let's begin. So I'd like to share with you the Bhagavad Gita and Karma Yoga. So the Bhagavad Gita is a recording of a Dharma talk, a discourse between Arjuna, the great warrior, and Krishna, the personality of God. This is to say, he's perfectly enlightened. Now, during this talk, Arjuna was very confused and upset. He was falling away from his duty as a warrior because on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he looked across and seeing the opposing army, it was filled with some old friends, some old teachers, and even some distant family members. So he said, oh no, I can't fight them. It was a big dynastic war. So everybody had to choose a side, and there was a lot of confusion. And so he was very confused. So Krishna gave him this beautiful, powerful teaching about Dharma, selflessness, and enlightenment. So this was something that ended up being very transformative and empowering spiritually for Arjuna. This is what I call a living teaching. It was a teaching about truth, about the Dharma, for Arjuna at that moment, dealing with his mind and the situation he was in. Now, a living teaching is very, very powerful. Even though this moment from this teaching was thousands of years ago, because it was a living teaching, it's eternal. And even though it was a Dharma talk advising him about a certain situation, which was a battle, a dynastic battle, regional northern India, with a very particular situation for Arjuna, there's something very universal about it because it's a living teaching. So living teachings are teachings that are alive, even if it's a long time ago. They're universal, even if it's about something very peculiar. And that's why this teaching is something that we can learn from now. Living teachings are very transformative. This is the thing. They create real change. I remember a student of mine said, before the Bhagavad Gita, before reading the Gita, if you had asked her, what's the most powerful book that had the most powerful effect on her life, she said, it would be my father's checkbook. He put her through school and bought her a car, things like that, right? And then she said, but after reading the Gita, she said, I've gained so much more awareness that is much more powerful than anything you can buy. So many of the teachings that we come across these days, spiritual teachings, they are not living teachings. Some random Buddhist monk will sit down, open up some book, and start, chanting some old chant that doesn't mean anything to you. And then they might tell you, oh yeah, here's some teaching about morality or Buddha Dharma, the Lotus Sutra, or something. They'll talk about something, but it doesn't have a lot of relevance to your current state of mind, to what you're facing. So many, many teachings through books and videos and teachers these days are what I call irrelevant, about as useful as a wooden frying pan. you know, like something that it doesn't really affect you, help you, address your mind. So the living teachings are something that you can accept, learn from, transform in, something that's actual for your state of mind and your condition. It helps you with the things that you're facing. So a number of years ago, I went to Kurukshetra, to the place of this battle. And there's a banyan tree there that is said to be the exact spot where Krishna and Arjuna had this discourse. And there were a number of, Krishna devotees there, walking around, looking at things. And there was a class going on where there was some, pundit or swami talking to about 80 people, and he was speaking Hindi, so I didn't understand. But he was, telling them teachings of the Gita. So, I sat there and looked at him and the reactions of people, and people were like, kind of like falling asleep and tired, and I said, wow, I don't see a lot of, realization. And he was just, I think he was very philosophical. So I went over to a different side of the tree with my student, and then we sat down, and I gave my teaching on the Gita. And some of my old students remember this teaching. This is a teaching of Krishna's eternal form. This is one of the most powerful parts of the book, where Krishna shows, not just his physical form, but his eternal spiritual form. So I gave that teaching, and my student and we closed our eyes, and we were in this place where Krishna had actually stood and performed this miracle. And we sat there and had an amazing, radical, transformative meditation where we saw Krishna's eternal form. And we were pretty happy. It was very powerful. My student was very, very bright and happy. And and then we got up and we were walking out of there past the other groups of people standing around going, So even though the Gita is a living teaching, you have to be able to connect with the life in it. Because you could just take the words and find concepts. So I always offer living teachings. These are teachings that affect you and have a connection, a relevance with your condition, your state of mind. So this is a powerful thing. So this is a teaching on the Gita that is a living teaching for you. Because what Krishna is teaching is very relevant to you. You're not so different than Arjuna. Arjuna, in his dilemma, is facing something that he doesn't want to face. And then he has a reaction that comes from self-cherishing. He's like, oh, I think it should be this way. Oh, I don't want to hurt this. Oh, I want it this way. And when you are, acting upon the limited self, then you want things one way or another, which draws you into not seeing life correctly. You think you are. You say, I want it this way, so it must be that way. But Krishna says, no, you're not seeing life correctly. You are tending to an idea, a conviction that isn't true. And so when you do that, you fall out of seeing truth. Now, we do this because we desire life to be a certain way. We desire, a certain experience. We desire a certain condition. We want this, we want that. And when you want it, then your will pushes you out of spiritual balance. So we need to see what Krishna's teaching is how to see the greater truth beyond what we want or don't want. Whatever our desires or aversions are, we have to see a greater truth beyond that. A lot of people would not even honestly approach this question of what is truth versus what I want. And a lot of spiritual seekers kind of, because of their desire, they form their opinion, and then they agree with their opinion. So they go, is this truth? Yeah. Definitely gonna have more ice cream. This is truth, You're like, too fat, and you're like, the truth is more ice cream. Yeah. My friend said, I have the body of a Greek god. And I said, a Greek god looks different than Chinese Buddha. So, yeah, we delude ourselves with self-desire. I was talking about this in Shasta. We create these opinions, and I said, spirituality is not opinion. I know we all think so. We're all like, in my opinion, spirituality is this. Oh, okay, cool. But that's why Krishna starts to say, no, let me show you a higher truth. And my example is martial arts. You go to a dojo, and your sensei says, oh, you should start blocking the punches to your head. And you say, well, my opinion is that I shouldn't. And then you get hit in the head, right? So the sensei actually knows something stronger than your opinion. Yeah. So this is important. I had a student who came over to me, and he said, oh, I'm suffering so much, why? And I would say, I would give him teachings, and then he would go, oh, very interesting, and not do them. And then he said, oh, but I'm suffering so much. And I said, yeah, it's because you're not listening to the teachings. And this is the important thing of the Gita. I mean, you have to really try to see the truth. If you just read the words, then you won't see the living sap of the teachings. You'll create ideas. That's why I'm here. Because I will disabuse you of those ideas. Yeah, it's true. When you're in desire and creating your opinions and delusions, then you cannot actually follow the spiritual path. You're following the self path. The spiritual path is very, it's letting go of self, not accumulating self through what you want to experience. So when you are filled with your desires and ideas, then you cannot keep a high state of mind. Yeah, so you can't maintain a state of mind. That's what I say. So you'll sit with me. You'll experience very high levels of attention. The Kundalini will move in you. You'll enter into fields of light. You'll go into a very high state of mind. And if you have so many concepts of self and desire, then the moment you walk out of the door, you'll lose a high state of mind. You'll go into self-description of the world. You'll go back into the self. So it's important to let go of this self idea, to be open to a higher truth so that you can hold a higher state of mind. There was this forgetful couple. They just kept forgetting things. And the wife says to the husband, "I want an ice cream sundae." And he says, "Okay, I'll go get it for you in the kitchen." And she says, "You better write it down, because we keep forgetting things." And he goes, "I'll remember, ice cream." And then she says, "Yeah, but I want whipped cream on it." And then he goes, "Okay." She says, "Oh yeah, and I want butterscotch syrup." He's like, "Okay." She's like, You sure you shouldn't write this down?" And he says, "Oh, I got it." She's like, "Oh, and chopped nuts." He's like, uh-huh. And she goes, "And a cherry on top." And he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure. I got it. He goes into the kitchen. He's there for a long time. Finally, he comes back with scrambled eggs, bacon, and she looks at it for a while. And then she says, "Where's the toast?" So this reminds me of my students. I'm not kidding. I'll sit down with my students. I'll show them high states of mind. Everything becomes clear. I tell them the right things. I say, "I see it. And then they walk into the kitchen and come back, and I say, "Where's the toast?" Yeah, so in the Bhagavad Gita, we're discussing the big questions of life, like what is the nature of existence, and who am I? Who am I? And what's my relationship with enlightenment? So there's these big questions that Krishna discusses, and he shares the truth about it. Now, today, to help you out, I'm going to bring all of the teachings of all these high dharmas that Krishna taught. I'm going to bring it into 3 elements. So this is the whole Gita can be brought into understanding 3 points. See, this is for all of you who didn't read the book. And for those of you who did, it's even better. And this is not to simplify it or summarize it. This is actually to show the profound nature of the teachings. Yeah, just because it becomes three simple points doesn't mean that it's not profound or that I'm being trivial about it. It's very, very powerful. Yeah, once, long ago, there was a monk who goes to his master, and he says, "Master, what is enlightenment?" And his master pauses for a moment and then says, "Om," and walks away. And then the monk goes, The monk goes back to the master another day, and he says, "Master, who am I?" The master says, "Om," and walks away. And then, again, the monk goes to the master another day and says, "How do I attain enlightenment?" And the master says, "Om," And this time, when he hears the master say Om, he has a recognition beyond words. He has a recognition of the deep, powerful spirit of life. And he goes into Satori, enlightened realization. So even when you look at simple things that are in the physical, if they are living teachings of the Dharma, when you bring your focused attention on bare truth, there's deep recognition, deep realization. So these three elements of the Gita, these are three secret teachings that Krishna is giving to Arjuna. And these teachings are, one, work is spiritual. And that spiritual work leads to the higher self. And that spiritual work leads to ultimate liberation, enlightenment. See? Simple. So, this is a very profound thing. We might think that spiritual practice is like sitting around meditating. It is. But, Krishna says work is spiritual. Everyone must work. This is the Dharma. So that's kind of a very, very powerful teaching, and maybe an unusual teaching. So I remember there was a student of my teacher, and she was in a nonprofit that she really cared about. She didn't get paid very well, so she was like struggling to pay her bills. And she was considering, becoming a computer programmer, but she didn't really like to do that. So she asked my teacher, what is my work? And she was getting ready for him to say, you got to be a programmer, or you can do your thing. And he simply said, your work is to let go of the self so that you can get higher. And that was something that she reflected on. And in reflecting on it, she realized that even though she really cared about her nonprofit work, that it wasn't getting her higher. She had a self-attachment to it, but it wasn't getting her higher. And so she then became an awesome computer programmer. So work is spiritual. It doesn't have to be like, a nonprofit worker. Any work done with the observations of the Gita, these are observations that make any work spiritual. So the second one is that the work, this spiritual work, brings you to the higher self. So people dwell in the egocentric self, the self of desire and aversion, the self of attachment and concept. So when people are dwelling in this condition, they suffer. They're going with the ups and downs of life, and they're suffering. It's limited. Therefore, through selfless work, you're able to attain something called the higher self. And this is your true nature, the realized aspect of self, the Atman. And this is something that brings you great satisfaction, happiness, spiritual insight, and balance. So this is important. The third teaching, third secret, is that there is enlightenment in your work. You know, you might be working at Starbucks. You know, you might be flipping burgers somewhere. You might be a computer programmer. Whatever you're doing, in every job, in every task, enlightenment is there. And to start to recognize enlightenment in your work is a powerful thing. And then you can start to devote your attention to the enlightenment in your work. And then through that, you're able to realize enlightenment through your work. Liberation comes from work. So these are the three elemental teachings of the spirit. Now, this is yoga, right? Yoga means union. And yoga is what Krishna taught Arjuna. This was his pathway to enlightenment. Now, he taught Arjuna the yoga of seeing truth, discernment, and discrimination. It's called Jnana Yoga. And he also taught Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of love and devotion. But he principally called for Arjuna to take action, to act. And that is Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is the yoga of action. So in my school, I teach Vajrayana Buddhism, and I also teach Karma Yoga. And the Karma Yoga is something that we put into action in our work. This is, Buddha taught right livelihood. So we do Karma Yoga as right livelihood. Right livelihood is, part of the Eightfold Path of Buddhist enlightenment. And Buddha said, make your work enlightened work. So we do this through Karma Yoga. Now, this evening, your work will transform from self-work, which is I'm working for self reasons, to enlightened work, Karma Yoga, spiritual work. So this is a very powerful turning point in one's spiritual trajectory, where you go from spending, a good part of your day, doing stuff for yourself, and then learning how to make that a spiritual practice. So let's talk about Karma Yoga a little more. So there's, two ways to do work or any action. You could work for the self, and this is working that binds you into this, self-delusion. Working for the self, for your desires, this binds you into karma, limited karmas. Or there's working in a spiritual way through the observations of Karma Yoga, and that's something that is liberating, that brings you out of self into your higher self. Now, a lot of people do work seeking, money, wealth, right? Position, certain experience. They say, I like to do this work because this is what I get out of it. Sometimes intellectual understanding. These are all outer things. When the self desires something, you might get skills. These are still considered outer things. But when a yogi is is working, a yogi is looking for spirit, is looking for spiritual truth in their work. They might gain wealth and skills and intellectual understanding and experience, but the primary concern and focus is seeing enlightenment in your work, seeing spirit in your work, and then you gain what Krishna calls transcendental knowledge, that which brings you out of the self into the presence of God consciousness. There's a story long ago in China. There's a little tea shop, and these two scholars happen to stop by there, and they come in and sit down. The shop owner comes over, and they order tea. One of the scholars sees that he's wearing prayer beads, the shop owner, and that the prayer beads were from a very particular monastery, because he's a scholar, he knows everything. And he's like, hey, have you gone to the Hakuin monastery? And then the tea shop owner says, yes, I did. Did you meet Hakuin, this great Zen master? Yes, I did. Did you get teachings from him? And he says, yes, I did. What teachings? Tell us of all the teachings. Oh, I only got one. He just said to me, do your work serving truth. And he's like, and that's enough for me. I've been working on that, and it's good. And then they say, oh, you should learn more. We have mastered over 1,000 Buddhist scriptures. And then he's like, okay. So he serves them tea. And then they pull out one of the scriptures that they're working on from the Gateless Gate. And they open it up, and they're all, So they're kind of going through a koan, and they're like, all right, there's one Zen master, he says, enlightenment is across the street. But then you engage with enlightenment in the middle of the street. But then you find enlightenment on your side of the street right where you are, and then there's nothing there. So they're going, whoa, what does this mean? Does this mean this? Does that mean that? They're going through different theories. They're pulling out, different, sutras, and they're all, do you think it means this and that? And then the tea shop owner comes back, pours them some more tea, and then one of the guys says, what do you think? And he was overhearing their conversation. And he says, it's just like tea. He says, first you see the tea outside of yourself. That's the other side of the street. Then you engage with the tea, and then you drink the tea, you've gotten it, and it's gone. So the scholars recognize a great, profound truth in what this tea shop owner says. And then they recognize that his is wisdom, and that what they had was many conceptual ideas. So this is the kind of thing that a yogi seeks. A yogi seeks some kind of, transcendental wisdom, and not just ideas. Now, one of the profound teachings in the Gita is that we should consider our work sacrifice or offering. Depends on how fun your work is. If it's very, very, very hard work, then it's a sacrifice. And if it's fun, happy work, then it's an offering. This is the way I like to do it. Now, most people sacrifice their happiness and spirit in their work. Most people, kind of go into a career that is kind of, it smashes their spirit down. There's so many demands in the world, so many hardships. You might have a mean boss, mean coworkers, difficult work, not enough pay. A lot of people in their work they lose spirit. They don't gain spirit. Even when they're doing the thing that they want to do, they don't find a lot of happiness, brightness, insight, wisdom. They find a lot of getting drained and tired, and it's hard and difficult. And after a number of years, the spirit is gone. They lose spirit. So it's very important to change that. You could work in a very, very difficult environment, a very, very difficult job. It could be physically tiring. You could have difficult managers and coworkers and customers. But if you are sacrificing that to enlightenment, then you start to gain energy, power, wisdom. Even when it's really, really hard, then you go, wow, I saw so much spirit and wisdom in dealing with that. Then your spirit grows stronger. It's not about you. You're giving it away. You're giving away your effort and attention to enlightenment. If things are hard, all the difficulty that you go through is a sacrifice to enlightenment. And then you're sacrificing your ego and your reactions, and then you're able to see a greater wisdom. And if everything's fun and awesome and wonderful, then that's an offering to enlightenment. It's not something that you take for yourself. You don't say, oh, I'm having a good time, I'll take that. That's me, I'm adding it to my desire self-profile. I'm offering that, I'm giving that to enlightenment too. It's a powerful teaching. Yeah. For me, I was very, very, very into martial arts, Chinese medicine. So when I met my teacher, I wanted to pursue those as a career. And my sacrifice was that I became a computer programmer. I didn't want to be a computer programmer at all, and I didn't think I could even succeed at it. But because I did that, then my whole career was a career of selflessness as opposed to self. And then it was very, very enlightening. I was able to do karma yoga very successfully. Yeah, so we have to find those places where we're having a hard time in our work and sacrifice it. Say, I'm giving this to enlightenment. All this hardship that I'm going through is me sacrificing the suffering self to enlightenment. And when you have great wins and you're happy and things are going really well, then you say, this is my offering to enlightenment. So long ago in China, there was a great master that was going to go to this nobleman's house and do a spiritual teaching. And the nobleman was preparing. He made this beautiful feast and flowers, decorations, and all these great things in the house. And then there's a big garden within the courtyard, and there was a gardener. And the gardener went around, trimming the hedges, and, cleaning up, raking, and things like that. But he did it as a sacrifice or as an offering. He was very, very in touch with the fact that an enlightened master was coming, and he wanted to make it very nice for the master, that experience of just walking through the garden, going to the house. So the master gets there, walks through the garden, very happy, looking at things, smiles. And then he goes into the house where everything's fancy and made up and all prepared. Then he turns around and walks back into the garden, and he sits down in the middle of the garden, and he starts giving his teaching. And after the teaching, the nobleman says, "Why didn't you want to be in the house? That's where everything was prepared." And then the master said, "The garden was prepared for the Dharma." And then the nobleman goes over to the gardener and says, "What did you do?" And he says, "With every trimming of the shrub, I saw that the master would be happier because of it. Every time I raked a leaf, I saw just a vision of the master happier because of it." So he did, some arduous work, and with every action, he saw an offering to enlightenment. So every single act, every task involved in your work or your school or finding your work is something that can be an offering to enlightenment. So it's important to observe that. Now we come to Krishna's greatest secret, what he calls the most confidential knowledge, for your eyes only. Yeah. So this is what we call coming from the heart in your work. This is serving enlightenment with devotion. So a lot of times people work from, the ego, self. They want this, they want that. They're frustrated with this and that. A lot of times people might even go into karma yoga kind of in the head, thinking, oh, I should try and look at this way and try to do this way. I should be mindful. There's a whole bunch of, mindfulness considerations. But Krishna says that, the biggest secret, the thing that brings you to enlightenment the fastest is that you do your work from your heart, that you are devoted to enlightenment. And that when you do your work, coming from a place of love and devotion and care for enlightenment, that you attain enlightenment. This is the fast track. Now in Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion, they say, just look at the enlightened teacher. Just love the enlightened teacher, because that's an easy interface for understanding enlightenment. But it's very, very powerful to see enlightenment in your work, and to love your work, and to do your work from a place of devotion and love. So this is the most confidential knowledge. Long ago in Japan, there was a Buddhist statue maker, and he put a bid in for a commission on creating a Buddha for a new temple. And he said, okay, yeah, I'll build some statue for you. And then he had a vision, and he was thinking about, okay, if I get this job, I'm going to make a Buddha like this and like that. And then he had a vision of the medicine Buddha, and it was a profound vision for him. It was something that was very awakening for him. And he had, it awoke in his heart, and he had love and devotion for the Buddha, the medicine Buddha. And he was like, oh, wow. He said, when I get this commission, I'm going to make this Buddha, and it's going to be so magical. So then he got passed over on the job. Somebody else got it, right? And he was like, oh, but I still have this love. And he said, I'm going to do something. So he went to the mountainside nearby the temple, and he carved out of the mountainside the medicine Buddha. And it's a very large one, many stories high. But he did this work with true devotion. He did this work from a place of love. And this became a very, very powerful site, a site of pilgrimage, because, after he completed it, some people came to look at it, and then some people had illnesses, and it was said that this medicine Buddha healed them of their illnesses. It was a very powerful, magical thing, magical work. So for him, it was a powerful expression of his love, and it was a lot of work, but it was something that created, an incarnation of the medicine Buddha. So this is what we do. When we do work from the heart, when we care, then we're able to actually bring some magic, bring the Dharma, bring divinity into our work, whatever we're doing. You're working at Starbucks and you're doing it from seeing enlightenment and the Buddha in your work, and then you give someone a cup of coffee, and then they drink it, and they're like, wow, I'm so happy. It's true. Or if you're writing software or something like that, writing software for a bank, let's say, right? You're making magical things happen in your mind, but you're also, affecting the world, the people that you work with, the company that you work for. Whatever your little part is, it's putting in some magic. So this is what we do in karma yoga. These are the enlightened ways, the higher ways, the divine ways, as Krishna says. But then there are lower ways. The lower ways, Krishna calls them demon ways. And this is simply self ways. And Krishna calls them the ways of demons. And this is where he introduces the gunas, right? The gunas are sattva, rajas, and tamas. And sattva means right or good. And then there's rajas, which is vanity and self-passion. And then there's the lower way, tamas, and that is lower and dark and aggressive. So these are the three modes of existence, the three natures of being. Ramakrishna, a great enlightened saint, he had a little parable about describing this. He said that there was once a merchant who walked into the woods, and there were three men in the woods. One man struck him in the head and knocked him out. This man, his name was Thomas. I have a student named Thomas, don't I? And the second man grabbed his purse and ran away. This man, his name was Rajas, right? This is, vanity, self-passion. He wanted the money. And the third, his name was Sattva. And Sattva, the man was unconscious. He picked him up, he carried him back, to the village, brought him to his home, and helped nurse him back to health. And then he was given a very great, large reward for his help. So this is the kind of things that, one of darkness would do, one of selfness, and one of selflessness. So Krishna, he taught about these three ways in work. And the ways that we describe, the ways of divinity, bring you to sattva, it brings you to goodness. So this is selflessness. This is working without an idea of, I'm getting something out of this. Now, desire is something that it ruins the spirituality of your work. So it's very important that we learn to work without desire. We do our work impeccably, we're focused on it, we do the actions, but we don't desire something from it. When you can have no expectation from the fruits of your labor, then you are free of desire. This is very important because when you want something from your work, you're constantly going into self. And then you won't be in tamas, you won't be in the right, good way. You'll always be in rajas. You'll always be in self and passion. So learning to do work for the sake of work, learning to be selfless in your work, not expecting things from it. You still get things. You'll get great things. You'll get more things. But you won't expect them. You won't work for those things. And then you're free from self. So I had a student, he was so selfish. It's like, hey, we're working on some software. We're making a new, software company, but, we're putting in kind of like sweat equity into it right now. He's like, well, what do I get out of it? What do I get out of it? What do I get out of it? My consulting rate is this. And, I really want this. I want this. I want this. So he was so selfish all the time. And I was like, I said, hey, do you think you could do me a favor? Come up to Bodhiwoods on Saturday and just help me out a little bit around, there's a few things to do. And he said, yeah, I guess, It wasn't, he wouldn't think of asking for anything out of helping me out with some stuff around Bodhiwoods, because it wasn't computer programming. So his rate didn't apply, And so he comes over, and then I said, okay, so I need a 4-foot trench, 20 feet long. And I gave him a shovel. And he was like, huh. I said, I'll come check on you in a couple hours. And I come back after a couple hours, and he's just digging. And he's like, I don't think I'm going to finish this. And I'm like, I need it by tomorrow. And he's all, okay, I'll try harder. And so he was digging and digging and digging and digging all day long. And finally, he finished it. And the amazing thing about it was, because it was so different for him, he didn't expect anything from it. He went through a lot in his head. He's like, why am I doing this? For no reason. But then he kept doing it. And then he ended up learning a very powerful lesson on action, work, with selflessness. Because at the end of the day, I didn't give him anything for it. At the end of the day, he ended up happy. And then he was able to put that happiness into his work. He said, I'm going to stop being I want to get something out of this, so selfish in my work. And then he was able to learn yoga. And this was the birth of Bodhiwoods Workdays. Because I saw that it did such an amazing thing. I said, wow, this really works. And then I said, hey, let's all go to Bodhiwoods and dig in dirt. And then it is a beautiful thing. So it's very important to work without, you have to observe your work. What do you expect to get out of it? And then if you say, wow, I'm getting all of this stuff from me, my intention is I want this, I want this, I want this, then that's what's bringing you out of sattva, that's bringing you out of goodness or rightness, and it's bringing you into selfishness, vanity. So it's very important to observe that you're letting go of self-desire, that you're doing things not for any intention except for maybe to give to a higher cause, give to, enlightenment. Otherwise, you're in rajas. And when you're in the mode of vanity, selfishness, and passion, then your work, Krishna says, your work is tainted, your work is dark, your work is limited, and you also suffer. You suffer it going good, you're happy, and you suffer it going bad, and you're very unhappy, and ultimately, you're unhappy, ultimately unfulfilled. So it's important to really observe in your work selflessness, not expecting anything from the fruits of your labor. It's just a much happier state of mind. Not that, if you work, sure, you're going to be paid. You're going to gain so much more. But you have to work in a way where you're able to let go of self-desire. Then, of course, there's tamas, and that's the dark way. And that's where you're heedless of, hurting people. You're harmful. You do things that are maybe wrong, that hurt people, that are difficult. So it's important to make sure you don't go into negativity and that you're always focusing on being positive. So I remember I had a student who learned the lessons of the Gita, and then he went to his high school reunion. And at his high school reunion, he was just, going and meeting people. Oh, what are you guys doing this day? Oh, where are you working? Oh, people are mostly talking about work and kids and stuff. And he was observing where people were coming from. And he's like, oh yeah, this person is coming from, Rajas, this person from Tamas. And he's like, most people were Rajas. And that is, he saw that they were either doing well in their career or not well in their career, but that they had ups and downs, and that ultimately they had dissatisfaction and suffering. And he was able to find one person who he said, this person was very selfless and was in sattva, goodness. But it was a very, it showed him a great truth in going through, talking to everybody, and seeing all these people who he knew from high school and where their minds were in their life and in their work. And it's very, very rare to see someone who's actually selfless. So that was good. It showed him the truth. And seeing the truth is very important, because if you don't see the truth of the teachings, then you don't see the power in the teachings. And this is why, Krishna at this battlefield showed Arjuna his eternal form. So Arjuna's like, oh, I'm listening, it's very important, yeah, this is good. But then the thing that was the demonstration of truth was that eternal form. And then Arjuna was like, whoa, okay. Now I see the truth, and it's unrefutable. So, as I said, I have a teaching on that as well, but I won't be giving that teaching this time. I will maybe another time. However, for the seeing of truth today, I would like to invite up a couple of the yogis to tell you just their experience in yoga. So you can understand yoga, as you hear the stories of someone who's gone through yoga for a few years or maybe many years, and you can see just for yourself from their attention and their experience, just an understanding of what yoga is. All right, so maybe we can start with Asha. Asha, if you're out there and if you would, and if you can get a microphone. And just, a couple minutes, if you would share with the audience your experience in yoga.
Hello.
Oh, and maybe come up on stage.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
Come on up. And you can stand here. That way you're on camera. For those not with
No
us
pressure.
here. Okay.
All right. So I'm Asha, for those who don't know me. So I thought today I'd talk a little bit about yoga and work, because I've had some really profound experiences with that. So just a little bit of my background. I grew up in a city where most people either, ended up in jail. Young women got pregnant early. That was kind of the trajectory for most people. If you were lucky, you got to college or somehow put yourself through college. Unfortunately, I was one of those people that put myself through college, really pushed, AKA still had a lot of debt. So by the time I found the study, I was working at a job that was good. It was, not paying very well, but it was still a job, and I felt like, okay, I can push myself in this. Was incredibly dissatisfied, though. Every single meeting I would go to, I would be pushed down. I felt very powerless in what I was doing, and I always felt very, very sad. Like I would go to work and just feel very sad. And so by the time that I met my mentor, Radha, she brought me into the study, taught me about, job yoga, fixing up your resume, doing all those lovely things. And so fixed up my resume and just set out on this course to really transform what I was capable of. I was really caught in a lot of self-cherishing in terms of what I thought was possible, right? So I came from a place where you don't make a lot, you're kind of, this is your limit in what you can do in life, and you just try to make it through, right? So that was a lot of the stuff that was in my mind as I was going through this process. So I was like, yeah, okay, I have a nice resume, but how the hell am I gonna get a high-paying job with, what I think is possible for myself? So I went through this process of setting up my resume. I would start sending out resumes as much as possible because I couldn't take time off of work. At lunchtime, I would schedule all my interviews, and so I would dash into the parking lot, sit in my car with my laptop, put on my hotspot, and then just in the middle of June, be in my car completely sweating. Yes, I do know that, and I can't, and trying to talk to the interviewers completely drenched in sweat because I didn't want people in the office seeing me interview. So, I went through this process, and a couple of months later, I did land a really high-paying job. And yes, the money is great, but I think for me, more than anything, it completely transformed what was possible, completely transformed my mind and my life and what I can give. I think I've completely changed in that looking at other women in my work environment, they can see me as a person that has come from what I've come from, and I can still do these things, and I can be the one in the meetings being like, no, Bob, we are not doing that today, and help leading people that are twice my age and running global teams of people of over 30. So it's been really incredibly transformative. I've gotten over fears like talking in front of people, right? Fears and what I'm able to make and what I'm able to do, and even having the opportunity to go back to Oakland and teach meditation. There's a lot of my students here today because of this and pushing that and giving other people the opportunity to come into this beautiful study. So yes, it works. I guarantee it. You just have to push. And if I can do it, you definitely all can. Cool.
Thank you. All right, how about Dharma? Dharma next, and then maybe one more, maybe Parvati after that. Just a couple more.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dharma, and what's that? Okay. Oh, wow, that's cool. I can't really see anything but the light now.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what yoga's like. You just, wow, I'm just like in the light, and this is awesome. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm one of the co-founders of AppBuddy. We've been going and growing for 10 years now. Which is wonderful. It's a yoga company, successful yoga company, and like a lot of my peers, I've actually been doing yoga since 2002. And for me, yoga it is the spiritual practice. It's the spiritual practice in life. Samvara set up this structure that we can engage in that's just amazingly bright, that every time I engage in it, I feel light and I have the possibility of transformation. So it wasn't always like this. When I first started, I was really pissed off and unhappy, and actually had limited opportunities in life. In my career, and just also in my state of mind. And then Ajahn said, this is the way out. So in addition to meditation, this is the spiritual practice, this is the way out. And I was just like, great. And he's like, and in addition, we're gonna start a tech company. And I was like, great, oh wow, I'm kinda geeky, I like that. All right, so sign me up. Where's the computer? I just want code to start running on my fingertips. Here it comes. I'm ready. I'm ready. We need you to do sales. And I was like, oh. And he gave this teaching of, there was, of course, a student of an enlightened teacher who went to the enlightened teacher and said, what do I have to do to become enlightened? He's like, if you want to become enlightened, do the things you don't want to do. Be with the people you don't want to be with. And there was one other thing that he said that you don't want to do that he talked about as well. But do the things that you don't want to do. And you know, my prescription for life, or basically my method of life, had not worked. It just had not worked up until now. I saw it. I saw it gave me a limited amount of happiness. So I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. Why not? And boy, did it push me out of my comfort zone. You know, I was not comfortable doing sales. I really sucked at it when I first started. But I kept at it. I really, really kept at it. And by pushing myself out of my comfort zone, these were the points where I was able to really transform. So, and it was really cool because we were going at it all the time. I mean, it was like 24/7. There was meditation, there was martial arts, there was this yoga company, and it was all the time. So it was truly the spiritual practice in everyday life, even when I wasn't sitting in front of an enlightened teacher. So that's the thing, is that like yoga is such a powerful structure that it enabled me to engage with the teachings of enlightenment, the teachings of transformation, the teachings that are just beyond words. They work, like Asha said. All the time, even when my teacher is not there. And it was interesting because when I first started this path, I used to go to Ajahn, I'm like, about everything. I'm just like, what shirt should I wear today? Or, you know, what should I do? Like this, that, and the other thing. And engaging in this practice of yoga, this everyday practice of life, and spirituality through life and enlightenment in my own experience. In my own experience, it's like the Buddha said this. It's like, don't take my word for it, do it yourself. And by engaging in that, I got to engage with the teachings of my teacher all the time, even when he's not there. And it was super empowered. And that's part of the magic of yoga, is that not only did I push myself out of my comfort zone, but I was in this empowered structure that was just absolutely magical, that afforded me such a gift. And, the cool thing about it is that there's so many times, like yoga really makes you very, very fluid, right? So the self is like, it's like, oh God, I'm always going to be this way. I'm always going to, these are my possibilities. I'm always going to be this way. But all of a sudden I step into this yoga, I step into yoga every day, and I step into this practice, and it's not always that way because it's just completely different. I'm becoming something I never thought I could become, and that's fluid. I changed careers like 5 times. I was a project manager, a technical architect, a salesperson, a marketer, and now a CEO. And normal people don't do that. Right? And it's because of this fluidity. And by stepping out of what I thought was possible before, and myself before, and engaging in this practice, there's points where the self drops away. It just drops away. And sometimes it's just not even there. And then it's, oh wow. and then it's like, life is love. Like, yoga is love. Yoga is absolute love. So it ends up being where I'm just like, okay, it's not what I'm going to get out of it. I'm just completely in love with this thing. And I do this for my teacher. I do this for, like Ajahn was saying, a sacrifice, an offering, right? But it takes a lot of heart. The best advice I can give you is just don't give up, because it is hard. You face the self all the time in yoga, and it's hard. And it's with heart that you don't give up. And it's with really, really wonderful teammates that things are possible, and wonderful Sangha that this is possible too. So, that it's truly the 3 jewels, and it's a gem. And it's such a gift. And for me, it's like, I really cannot think of a better practice and devotion to God than doing this all the time. So.
Thank you. Is Parvati here? Oh, good.
You want me to come on stage?
Yeah, you can come up this way.
Should I stand there or here? Okay.
That's good.
Okay. I get nervous, so I have
Oh,
notes.
you have to hold the mic close. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, a little more.
Other way?
No, that's good.
Okay, cool. Hello, I'm Parvati, and I'm really happy to be here and to have the opportunity to share my story of yoga with you. I have 17 years of experience as a software engineer, architect, and tech lead, and I'm the CTO of AppBuddy. I've worked on and influenced technology for trading systems, bank mergers, e-commerce platforms, and mobile apps for some of the largest companies in the world, all thanks to yoga. I was introduced to yoga right after high school. I didn't have a clear idea of what I wanted to do professionally, didn't have tech skills, and didn't like the idea of programming because it sounded boring. But having the very bright and successful examples of Samvara and Mandala inspired me to see that perhaps this tech thing wasn't so bad,
and that I too could be successful. In the beginning, I deeply struggled to learn technology, unable to grasp the abstract concepts of files in the computer, movie joke, and JavaScript. It was kind of true, though. It was very true. Yet I somehow knew that every attempt I made, the clearer it would all become until finally things started to click. I saw momentum in yoga. I learned that I didn't have to be my definition of good at it for it to work. The key was just to start and keep taking small steps. After learning coding through working on a software yoga project, I was able to get into the tech job market. From there, I pursued many contracts that exposed me to different technologies, methodologies, and teams. Engaging in technology became fun and absorbing. It also improved my meditation. By becoming an engineer, leading teams, building and growing yoga companies, I've been able to overcome not wanting to speak in public, being afraid that I don't know enough to succeed, not wanting to manage people. My teammates are sitting here. And countless other fears and self-imposed limitations of the ego. 10 years ago, AppBuddy was created as a yoga project, and today it's a multi-million-dollar company that employs over 50 people. It's a place for Sangha and non-Sangha employees to engage in right livelihood, where we build and sell powerful technology solutions that have a real impact on businesses, from small nonprofits to global enterprises. Over time through yoga, my awareness changed from being fixated on self to being more open, powerful, and compassionate. It's been exhilarating to break through the boundaries of self. Yoga is particularly effective in our school because we work on it in teams, and through this practice, we learn to elevate each other. And boy, is it beautiful to see people transform and get higher together. For me, yoga has been one of the greatest gifts on this path, and I hope you can experience it for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, wonderful. So this is the testament of yoga. So just by seeing some yogis who've been in the school maybe a shorter time or a longer time, it gives you an awareness of the kinds of things that we can accomplish through yoga. So now I'm going to do the esoteric teaching of the evening, which is a transmission, the transmission of yoga. And this is the secret teachings, the teaching that has no words, but it transmits the heart of yoga. And this is what gives you the second attention, the spiritual attention to your work. So this teaching transmits an awareness, a spiritual awareness that you will have for addressing your work. So you'll be able to then, from this teaching, do your work with new eyes. It's kind of like how, Krishna said, I'm going to show you enlightenment, but I have to give you a special, eye to see it. And that's a transmission that he gave him, the special eye to see it. So this is something that gives you this magical way to have an awareness, a spiritual awareness, to see your work differently, to see enlightenment in your work, and much more opportunity for success. So this transmission, this teaching, has no words. We're just going to sit up straight. You can look towards me, and while we sit, we're going to sit for one song. You can focus lightly on the third eye, and we'll just sit quietly. At one moment, I will go like this, a mudra, and then I'll stop. And just try to still your mind. and I will transmit this to you. Try to feel and be aware of the transmission. Even if you're not very aware, you're still getting the transmission. This is something that I do. I do this with Kundalini energy, a very refined spiritual energy, and also through shifts of attention. So I shift your attention with this spiritual energy. I'm very, very aware of my students in the other countries. I've gone through the pictures just before coming out here. So even if you're not here, I'm going to be doing this teaching for you. Okay, so sit up nice and straight. Look up this way, and let's begin. All right, wonderful. So you got it. You got a living teaching, a transmission that opens your eyes to spirit and work. But consider these teachings of selflessness in your work, of seeing enlightenment in your work, of doing your work for that enlightenment. See this in your work. Work in this way of the yogi. I have another support for you, which will be our next book. And this book is a book that I wrote just for you, for this teaching. This book is called Job Yoga. This builds upon the teachings of Krishna and also Buddha's teachings of right livelihood, and has our school, our Vajrayana Buddhist school structures in it. So this book will be available on the wiki, and if you're in another city, we'll be emailing it to you in an electronic form. And this book will be something that is very, very helpful for further understanding yoga and also giving you specific details of mindfulness and observances in your work. All right, wonderful. So thank you all very much. It was a pleasure sitting with you today, and this was very beautiful teaching. Thank you all.